New York announced they wouldn't be doing the 9/11 memorial, the light show. And it is, they're not going to do it because of COVID concerns. My understanding is that another nonprofit stepped up to make sure it happens.
Yeah, so they're going to do it by like any means necessary, they were saying. They're like, this is not something that we're willing to put aside. Yeah. And I don't think they referred to, for example, the BLM mark in the street or anything, but they were very serious about it. They're like, I think it was the SBA, some association of police officers, and they were like, we're not going to let this slide, which I thought was great. I'm really happy to see that. Like, I'm happy to see normal people saying this is something that's important and you're not just going to take it away from us, because if you're healthy enough to be raising Cain in the streets and painting stuff on the streets, then why are you telling us that we can't do this? You could literally just push the button. Yeah, it looks like this. It's a memorial for the Twin Towers. And they're like, we can't do it because coronavirus. Oh, yeah.
Which is a lie.
Total lie. Total lie. Like, why? What's their reasoning?
It's COVID. They say it requires a large team to pull off, and it's a lie. And the reason I say it's a lie is because they're marching with Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. They're using city resources to paint the ground. I got to be honest. This, in my opinion, is if this story, goes viral, I really don't think Biden and Harris could win. I mean, first, Trump needs to address it.
Yeah.
And I wonder what Biden and Harris would actually say about it. But
nothing. What? Absolutely nothing. They will not address this at all.
To be fair, Joe Biden said the Antifa people should be arrested, and charged.
I will make a gentle person's bet with you.
Gentle persons? You're so politically correct.
I am indeed. A gentle person's bet. And you guys are welcome to take me up on this. That they will not say a single word about this.
But will Trump?
I think he will. And it might be late. It might be too late to do anything. But I think he'll bring it up at some point.
Right now, politically, the opportunity to address it is now.
Yeah.
Because apparently there's other groups that are going to step in and they're going to make sure it happens.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you this, man. What do you think the average American is going to be thinking when they see Bill de Blasio painting Black Lives Matter and then New York City saying no 9/11 memorial?
It's obviously inconsistent.
I'm not saying Bill de Blasio is the one, orchestrating the shutdown of the memorial. What I'm saying is you have a city where the mayor can defy the law with no permit,
right?
Paint his political slogan in front of someone else's building. Well, they're usually someone else's building,
right?
But in front of Trump's building. Then have taxpayer resources fund the cops who are going to stand there, and we can't make the 9/11 memorial happen. That's a horrifying indictment on our country, and the people of New York. But that being said, of course, people immediately stepped up to try and make sure this does happen. Well, I don't know if it's still going to happen. But they're straight up saying, so for now, it's not.
Right.
And I forgot what the other nonprofit is. They said they're going to do whatever they have to make it work, right?
And Bill de Blasio was talking about how Black Lives Matter transcends politics. You want to talk about something that actually transcends politics? Commemorating 9/11, because that affected everyone. It brought the whole country together, and it still is something that every single person in every single party should remember.
Yeah.
Like, this is not something to mess around with. And I hope that people remember it, honestly, because that's something that we should.
Well,
it kind of feels like the country's falling apart, and if we could come together around something that would actually make us feel some kind of brotherhood with our neighbors,
it should. Yeah. Do you know the date of the Pearl Harbor bombings?
Yeah.
What is it?
December 7th, 1944.
See, I don't remember that date.
You don't remember that date?
No. Nope.
It was a day that will live on in infamy.
I know. And in Chicago, when you take the train, I think it's the Orange Line train, from the South Side into the Loop, there was a building I always remember that it had Pearl Harbor and 9/11 painted on it. And it was like, never forget. And it showed both.
That's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still there.
Yeah, I'd be curious. We should pull up Google Maps.
Well, it was a train line. You might be able to.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing it, and I didn't remember the date. Obviously, I remember 9/11. I was alive. I was 14 or whatever watching it happen. And when Pearl Harbor, I don't know. It was the 70s.
What's that?
No. What was the date you said?
Okay, it was December 7th, 1944.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the reason I remember it is because I used to work with old people.
Yeah.
And I would talk to people about what they were doing, and I asked them what they were doing on the day that Pearl Harbor happened. And some of them could tell me. And that was really interesting because it was so different from 9/11. But the emotion was definitely still there. And I was like, So you guys weren't like sitting around the TV like we were, but you were listening to it on the radio. Huh, that's really interesting. She's and this lady I was talking to was like, yeah, it brought everyone together, very similar to the way 9/11 did. And I think that do they want the division that we have in this country? Do they think this is good? Is this what they're trying to fight by getting rid of the 9/11 memorial? I don't know. I'm just spitballing, just conspiracy theorizing.
But the reason I brought it up and asked you if you knew the date.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no. Yeah. I have no idea why I said 70s. I don't know what I was thinking.
A little off.
Very, very off. Because you said 7th, and I was like, wait, what did you say? Did you say 70s?
That doesn't sound right, yeah.
No, that's clearly wrong. But I was thinking about, we're going to have a generation of young people that were either born after 9/11, which is a lot of people right now.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Like the TikTok generation.
Oh, gosh.
And there's going to be a lot of people who were born at a certain point where they were too young to remember it.
Yeah.
And they're not going to remember it. And so when that point hits, and I think in maybe 10 or 20 years, you will see the memorial lights get turned off one night. And that's a night when people are going to be like, I don't know, whatever. Right now, it's not.
That makes me sad.
Yeah. I mean, do we still do anything for Pearl Harbor? Like in this regard?
No.
Maybe
I think
Pearl Harbor.
I think politicians do. And at Pearl Harbor, they actually do have memorial like tours and stuff. I think they give speeches on Pearl Harbor Day. Not that I can recall any of them immediately offhand.
Yeah.
But I think they do commemorate it at the kind of national level.
It's kind of crazy,
Weird.
But I was reading this earlier, and I'm just offended. You know what I mean? There should be no circumstance where this story should need to be reported. I believe the city should be able. So let me read the context real quick, just so I can properly explain what's going on. The New York Post says, the iconic Lower Manhattan 9/11 memorial display that features twin beams of light to honor victims of the terror attacks will not shine this year over coronavirus concerns, organizers said Thursday. The annual Tribute in Light display requires a large crew to pull off, the 9/11 Memorial and Museum said on its website, posing health risks this year that were far too great. The museum said it was an incredibly difficult decision to nix the lights, but announced an alternative citywide initiative to commemorate the 19th anniversary of September 11th. The new plan, dubbed the Tribute in Lights, will feature buildings across the city lighting up their facades and spires in blue on 9/11. In a spirit of unity and remembrance, the city will come together for a tribute in lights to inspire the world and honor the promise to never forget. Many iconic New York City buildings will be lighting their spires and facades in blue to honor those killed on 9/11. The decision to cancel the Tribute in Light Memorial comes after the museum this year also scrapped the in-person reading of 9/11 victims' names at the annual Ground Zero ceremony. But last week, a nonprofit, the Tunnel to Towers Foundations, announced its own separate Lower Manhattan ceremony where select family members of 9/11 victims will be permitted to read the names of their loved ones. I think we're in trouble. It's scary to me that they will paint Black Lives Matter in the street and arrest anyone who dare oppose them without permitting, and they will not read the names of 9/11 victims.
To me, it really feels like they're just pulling for division. And I hate to see that, but it's making me really suspicious. What else would you call this?
Well, I know it's not the city that's deciding it.
Right.
But don't you, isn't it fair to say that there's some kind of cultural problem we're having if there's no resources for this event? Why couldn't Bill de Blasio, without permit, pull taxpayer funding to guarantee the reading of the 9/11 victims' names?
So it shows misprioritization for sure. And it shows that people like Bill de Blasio just have way too much power, which I think we already knew. But this is really...
They're not supposed to have that power.
Of course not.
The problem is the people who just go along with whatever they say.
Right. When are you going to throw a fit and make something happen?
How do you prevent something like that? Because our system is, of course, naturally hierarchical. And you have police. They're like, I don't know, my boss said to go do this. It's like, well, do you know what you're doing is illegal, right? Doesn't matter. My boss said to do it.
You know what? I think I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse, and I think you're probably going to agree with me, but I'll say it again. I think that the reason we're having this problem is because it's been good for so long. It's been too good for too long. We've forgotten what it's like. We assume that things are the way they are and that everyone's got our best interests at heart, and we've forgotten that, our great-great-grandparents were pioneers and that our grandparents fought in wars and that this is actually something special and different. And we don't travel that much and we don't see other countries. So we're like, all right, so this creep, we don't pay any attention to it. We just kowtow to whenever someone tells us you're going to do this. It doesn't matter if it breaks constitutional law or whatever. We're going to do it because it's the way things are.
Oh, man. So what you're saying is the people of this country weren't sleeping while their roommates were stacking objects on top of them. They were awake, but stoned.
Yes, I think so.
That they're like, and immediately all of the stoners are like, "How dare you!" I'd push the dislike button if I didn't have to get up. I'm kidding. It's a joke.
I think you're right though, because sleep is something relatively involuntary. And being like drunk or stoned is something
on downers.
On downers. You're kind of sleepy. You're out of it. I get it.
You're like, I feel good, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're stacking stuff on top of me, but I don't care.
That's a problem for future me.
And then, and then they're like about to balance the gigantic wrench on top of your head, and you're like, oh man, that might fall, and it does, and it hits your toe, and you're like, ah!
You're freaking out.
And now it's finally so bad, but you didn't do enough before. I don't think, I honestly, I don't know if there's like an actual way to solve that without some kind of different system. I know a lot of people love to bring up Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Starship Troopers?
I haven't.
Or seen the movie?
No, I've only heard like little snips about it. And it makes me want to read it and watch the movie. We should watch the movie. Movie night.
Yeah, the movie is weird because apparently like the interpretation of the book in movie form like turned everyone into Nazis.
Well, that's annoying.
Yeah, like Sargon did a thing about it where he was basically like, the Society of Starship Troopers is supposed to be a liberal society.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know all the details. I'm sure Sargon knows way more about it than I do. But the general idea is that service guarantees citizenship.
Right.
If you serve in any way for a couple of years, you gain the right to vote and participate in public matters. Civilians have full rights, but don't vote and don't, run for office and stuff like that. It was an interesting idea because it makes sure that only the people who actually are working to better.
That's interesting to me because, when women got the right to vote, similar responsibilities were not required of them as were required of men.
Yep.
And even then I saw that as being a problem. Like, I think it's great. I think everyone should have a say in what happens in the world. I think women are important. I think having families is important, and doing whatever you want to do is absolutely pivotal. But if you're going to have rights, you should also have responsibilities. Men still have the draft. And you got to have the responsibilities, man.
So I don't have anything pulled up. Definitely fact check me on this one. But I was reading something about it that said one of the big arguments from women's groups against the right to vote,
I remember,
was that they didn't want to join the fire brigade or like do other public services.
Yeah.
I guess back then for men, it was like volunteer fire service was mandatory or something.
Right. Voluntary. It was actually part of
civic duty.
Yeah, part of civic duty. And,
wow.
and, voting is obviously part of civic duty too. That is interesting. I remember some of that anti-feminist propaganda, which sounds terrible now. I know. Yeah. But it's so interesting because you're like, what were these people actually thinking? How could you possibly think that women don't deserve or don't need the right to vote? And you read what they're saying and they're like, well, we think that it's important that women be at home, and we don't really want women to have the extra tasks of like putting out fires should they come up. It turns out women aren't really all that great at that kind of stuff. And if you have a weak link in a fire chain, you're going to have a problem. So
ultimately though, the right to vote was granted without any additional responsibility.
And you know what? I need to figure out why that happened.
But I'm not in the fire brigade. I don't put out fires. You know what I mean?
Are you not in the draft?
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah,
that's the draft, man. And
they recently ruled, I think, right?
Yeah. Remember when the feminists were melting down, thinking that they might have to just be housewives now because they might actually get equality.
The draft is dumb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can agree. Absolutely.
I think the issue with the draft that people don't understand, or actually the problem with it, was the exploitation of it.
Right.
People didn't know why we were going to Vietnam.
Right.
Or Korea or these other countries. I mean, I could only say I'm like personally glad that, the U.S. was somewhat involved in Korea and is now extremely involved in Korea because South Korea is a free and amazing place. Putting their weird racism aside.
That's right.
It's fine. Korea. But a lot of people didn't understand, and so they resisted and they opposed it. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. If you want to catch the full show, tune in to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button, or check us out on iTunes and Spotify, and we will soon have this podcast up for free on all podcast platforms. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next episode.